Welcome to part 3 of our live training session here with our S13 drift car. Now in the last video we learned how to get the engine fired up and running, holding its own idle and getting all that sorted out. Now we're ready to turn our attention in doing our part throttle cruise area calibration process. So we need to sort out the fuel delivery and the spark timing for normal driving conditions. This is where we're going to spend probably 80 or 90% of our time operating our engine at, so we need to make sure this is going to be calibrated properly. I'll show you how to do different calibration techniques. So we're going to learn how to work with a closed loop fuel correction and learning how to optimize our spark timing with a chassis dyno or without a chassis dyno. There's a lot to cover here. Let's jump into our live training session so we can get started. Welcome back to our live training session here with our S13 drift car. Now in the last video we had the engine fired up and running. We know we have the idle control worked out. We have an open loop format. We're using our spark timing feedback to maintain and hit our desired idle speed, which is manipulating the torque. Again, we went through all that. It should make sense. We know the engine can start, fire up, and run on its own at this point, and we're ready to move into doing the drivability tuning. This is going to be the part throttle cruise style tuning. Now on a drift car, this may not be super important. On a road going car that spends a lot of time actually driving in part throttle conditions, this makes or breaks how the car is going to be working. So if you have a car that drives very poorly because the fuel and spark timing aren't sorted out, it is not going to be fun to drive. The majority of the time that you spend driving your car isn't going to be at full throttle. It's probably going to be at least 80 to 90% that it will be at normal part throttle kind of driving. We need to make sure this is right. We need to make sure this is calibrated correctly. So I'm going to show you some tips and tricks of how to do that here in this video. We're going to be looking at doing our injection timing along with our fuel tuning, and then we're going to go look at a couple other details that we need to know. Now we have some different editing techniques available to us when we're working with our main fuel table. I'm going to show you what I do in my workflow when I calibrate using our G4x system. You definitely have other options available, but I'll just show you how I go through this and calibrate things very quickly to get things going. I don't know how far off my fuel table is going to be when we start to drive. That's going to be kind of a bit of an unknown right now. We might have to pull out some fuel. We might have to add some fuel. I'm anticipating having to add some additional fuel because we've just kind of populated out the table if we jump into our main table here. So we're going from our basics page into our fuel page here. Into our fuel page, we're finding here, if we're taking a look, that we have our table here at idle. We essentially have covered this area right here. So roughly from 0 to 1500 RPM. We've gotten this sorted out from 0 to negative 100 here in our MGP, or manifold gauge pressure. This area has been sorted out. We know it's pretty reasonable. Once we start to drive it under a load, we'll be in this area of the table here. So 200 and 2000 RPM and higher, and then moving out here throughout our different load points. We need to make sure we have enough fuel there. These values probably have to go up higher. I don't want to go and just jump to conclusions. We'll test this and figure out exactly what they need to be at, and I'll show you my editing and calibrating techniques. Now, one thing I want to do to this table that I did not do when we were building the base file, I want to go here and add some more breakpoints under my manifold gauge pressure. So if we're seeing here 0 to negative 100, this is going to be characterizing essentially our vacuum area of operation. So from 0 to roughly 100 here, this at sea level should be approximately going up to 15 pounds of boost, and then if it goes to 120 here, this should probably go to about 17-18 pounds of boost. Now I anticipate running about 20 pounds of boost on this setup, so I need to go and scale these breakpoints out a little bit higher so we cover more area when we're getting into higher manifold pressure. So we don't want to go and just be capped at 120. Let's go here and click on our axes and click X. We're going to jump down in here and put a breakpoint at 140. We'll do one here at 160. And then we'll do another one here at just 180. It's going to ask me if I want to interpolate this data here. I'll say yes. It's going to be filling that table in based on and anticipating the loads going higher here. So now we have a table that's a little bit better suited to what we're trying to do here, going up in boost, and we won't find that last row right here that we were previously at in the breakpoints at 120 will be a hindrance. We need to have higher breakpoints in the table, so if we go up in boost and our manifold gauge pressure is getting higher and higher here, we can account for that and we deliver the fuel properly to the engine. So that's going to be one thing to consider. Jumping into our spark timing table, I do want to also just make sure we've scaled that out here accordingly. This is going to 240 kPa, so that should be sufficient. We're probably looking at running it right around maybe 220 kPa, so we've given ourselves a little bit higher here in the table to go if we need to. Okay, so that should be good as far as our table goes. Now there is a few other things that I want to talk about here. We're going to be going in and doing the calibration process, just assuming that we have our fuel injection timing here. We need to go and turn this from a single zone. We want to turn it into a 3D table, so we're going to do that right now. Click Table. This is going to allow us to be very specific with our fuel injection timing. So what we're going to do here is double click on our injection timing in our table here, and we'll find that appears. Let's lock this down. Now, if we look here at the injector timing position, we want it to be end of injection, or EOI referenced. We can put a value here of about 360 degrees. That'll give us a good starting point for any kind of engine. The default value that they had in here for a singular value is 340. Now, that would apply to idle, part throttle, and wide open throttle. It would also apply from low RPM to high RPM. We need to be a bit more specific with our fuel injection timing, but we have to start off with a value or values in the table here that are going to be kind of a generic approach that still allow the engine to run properly, and then we can learn how to optimize it from that point. So we need to go and start off here calibrating our table, having a fixed fuel injection timing value. 360 is usually what I start with. Then we can start to advance it or retard it from that point to experiment and see if it changes our fuel delivery to our engine. What we're looking at doing here is optimizing the fuel being delivered into the engine, so we're getting the fuel. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.